Stuck on CNA labs? Tired of scattered tutorials? This full course covers every exam topic with real lab configs. Grab your free lab in the description. Ready to pass CNA and boost your career? Start now!
Welcome everyone to our CCNA study course. First of all, let me briefly introduce I didn't prepare a self-introduction slide for this PP because usually I don't need to introduce myself because I normally teach IE level courses, including some upgrade content later on. So many students already know me. I generally don't have any self-introduction stuff. It might have been a long time since you've seen me on Tencent Classroom. But that's okay. We'll just continue with the lecture as normal. Regarding this round of CCNA, it's a bit special because it's the last class before the new year. The last class and for this class, generally, based on experience from many students, especially later in the course, will have year-end summaries at their companies. Or have to work over that kind of stuff, right? So students often end up being absent, and that's a normal situation. But I still hope everyone, if you are able to come, tries and if you really can't make it, after class, go watch the recording. Why is that? Because our CCNA, since its content is relatively not that the content is relatively basic. More importantly, as long as you're willing to learn well, and you watch, and all that stuff all the way through, then you will definitely be able to learn it. It's not like for CCI, some things are lots of things go back and forth. If you don't spend time understanding them, it might be very difficult to write, but NA won't be like, NA is all fundamentals, you might not have even heard of it before. Right? So for things you haven't heard of, just listen to them, and take some notes. There isn't much need for deep, critical thinking about it. That's how it is. So I hope everyone, even if you can't make the live session, the recording, well, you should focus on watching that. Make sure you don't miss any, especially for those of you following the live class. Missing classes. That's the most terrible, because if you miss classes before the new year, and you don't understand, right, you'll find that you haven't understood NA the whole round. You'll get that kind of false, and then, you'll have to relearn and go through another round after the new, right, and just like that, a month, right, and wasting time month after month like, when will you ever pass the IE, right, time gets wasted in exactly this way. So everyone, try your best to make the most of your time. When you come to sign up for the course, it's not just about finding some random videos online to study. The fundamental reason is, our training class, right, is more efficient. You can follow the course and quickly get this certificate, including getting the certificate. That's basically the purpose, right? So everyone, regarding the course schedule, you must keep up with it. You absolutely, and some homework assignments try to do them if you have time. But I don't require every student to complete 100, but at least, alright, you should take a look at, if you don't have, at least take it, you have to understand, okay? Well, without further ado, let's begin this new round of CCNA. Before we start the CCNA, first, I want to briefly explain something to you all, because many of you haven't entered the industry yet. Of course, some of you are already working, but you might not have a clear idea about the whole IT industry, especially the career development for us network. You might not fully understand it. That is, in your future, how will your career develop over the next 3 to 5 years, right? How to make choices that suit you best, right? Because everyone's situation is, for instance, some of you might be overseas, right? Then the job direction you choose, right? And your career development path might differ, and some of you have while some of you don't, right? Some of you have a higher education, maybe you have a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree, so your learning direction and your career development direction, so, for everyone, based on your own situation, and combined with my you should choose a path that is relatively suitable for you, okay? Okay, First of all, let me briefly explain what employment options are available for us network engineers. What kind of career choices are out there? Generally speaking, for us network engineer, when you go out to do, it's mainly these 4 aspects. These 4 aspects, right? First of all, is relatively quite difficult. The first one is relatively quite. Why is? Because it's the vendors. So-called vendors, and this is targeted at the manufacturers of our network equipment. The ones that produce, for example, the well-known ones like Cisco, Huawei, H3C, Huawei. And then there are some others, like Sangfor, Juniper, and also ZT, and a whole bunch. There are all these well-known and lesser-known vendors, right? And there are also many different job positions within the vendors, right? Although they are all called network, but it's divided into many positions, such as post-sales support, because they sell equipment, right? And after selling equipment, there will inevitably, that I also need to go and and that is the post-sales engineer within the vendor, right? And what, since I produce equipment, there will definitely be R&D engineers, right? And what, test engineers. And many, these are all options that network engineers can. So as for vendors, relatively speaking, their requirement, first of all, is that the educational requirement, usually it's from a 980, and then the second thing is about your professional skills. Generally speaking, they hire CCIEs. As for HCIP, generally speaking, they don't, and then those with programming experience or some development experience are definitely preferred, because for the vendor, they need to target hardware devices and need to adapt their corresponding operating systems. There's a lot of development that needs. This is the situation for vendors. Since their requirements are so high, their compensation is relatively better. And these companies are generally quite large, so their compensation, compared to some below, especially like system integrator and service, is likely much higher. That's for vendors. Generally speaking, or if you are a fresh graduate. If you want to join a vendor, it's relatively more difficult. Unless you're from a 980, and then, by the time you graduate, you are already a CCIE, and before graduation, you have some relevant system integrate, work internship experience. This kind of work experience, only then is it to get hired by a vendor. Of course, other situations are more special case, we won't talk about. This is regarding a vendor. Like Huawei, right? You want to join Huawei, right? That must be specific correspond, right? Because Huawei only goes to those few, right? Let's not dwell on that. And I suppose most of you probably can't reach. The second one is carriers. Carriers are actually a special type of client. It's a special type of client. It can also be classified as one category of these clients. Carriers, for example, are telecom, mobile, and right. These are the main three carriers. The three major, they have a huge number of network devices and lines that need maintenance. Right. So their engineers, well, many of them are not on their own official payroll. Many are not official staff. They are all third party. Right. There are even fourth party ones, so the devices and lines they need to maintain. Well, so where do these people, they turn to our system, right? Or let's say agents, outsource the work to them. Right. I take this maintenance, for instance, the network, I outsource it to you. You come and take charge of them. Of course, they also have their own engineers. And these engineers mostly play a supervisory role, something like that. They get in and then supervise your entire operation and understand. So, if you want to enter this carrier, the first type of role is as a third party, meaning your official job is actually with this agent. Your, right, that is to say, your employment is with the agent, and you are outsourced to work inside the carrier. Then your salary is paid to you by our agent, is paid to you by the, and your workplace is on the carrier's side. That's the kind of, do you understand? But in this case, generally speaking, we don't recommend you go, because this kind of work is relatively boring. And then, for the improvement of your person, it's also so try your best. Try not to be outsourced by this agent to a carrier or a client to do what we call on-site support. We call this position an on-site support which means staying at a certain company, maintaining their small network. Maybe the network isn't, but relative, You won't be out doing projects every day. Building network. This is for troubleshooting and stuff like that. This is fun. Right? You're just stuck guarding this pile of equipment. Right? This single line. Usually, nothing. You might only run into this a few times a year. Right? This kind of situation is probably like retiring. Right? So we're saying you should try to avoid this kind of situation. Many fresh graduates or classmates without relevant work experience can easily be taken by this contractor. Just gets sold, right? It's basically just, right? The operator outsources this net, right? For example, as I'll do 5 million. I'll package it and sell it, this right, to a certain, and then this company goes out to find people, right? For simple operations like this, they don't need a lot of work experience, right? They don't need a very, very skilled engineer, right? So they like to recruit these classmates with no project experience, with no work experience, these kinds of class, right? Because these classmates, their salary expectation, right? Even if they pay you 10,000 a month, right? It's only just over 100,000, right? And then they get a few people, right? 500,000 a year. Then the remaining 4.5 million just goes straight into their own pocket, right? So, typically, a resident is just sold off like, right? So try your best, try your best. Try not to work for an agency, and then be outsourced as a resident, and you know what I mean. Try to avoid this kind of position, because this kind for your future career development is actually really bad. This is really bad. That's one type. The second type is a permanent position at the carrier, and this permanent position is a bit like, how should I put it? A bit like a SIP without connection. It might be very hard to get. Can you understand that? So this is also outside the scope of our. If you have connection, you probably wouldn't need to, right? Even without relevant professionals, you can actually still. This thing doesn't really have much to do with technology. We won't go in. Key point, for all of the key thing to is this system or agents. Whether it's Cisco or Huawei, those are the main two in China, including H3. Huawei, they all have corresponding system or agents. Because for these devices, once they won't sell directly to end customers. They all have corresponding agents. Like provincial level A. Of course, different vendors have their own classifications for. They each have their own way. For example, the most classic set. First, there's the right. For example, in China, the general and then under the there are corresponding gold, silver. These understand? These agents, they get their stock from Cisco. Mainly just sourcing, right? The discount they get on the stock will vary. This results in gold and silver part when they issue quotes to customers. For instance, right? During the bidding, the quotation they provide might be different, right? Of course, this isn't really relevant to everyone. Generally speaking, it's mainly the ones participating in bids and running projects who are gold and silver partners. So, compared to silver partners, get a bigger discount margin. Yeah, a bigger discount. This leads to gold partners winning relatively more projects. And also, their scope tends to be, their scope is wider. Because what they might not be equipment from just this equipment, they might represent many vendors. In that case, their probability of winning right? So, if you guys are looking for a job, the top choice, is a gold partner. The top choice is understand, whether it's Cisco or Huawei. Domestically, it's mainly vendors like Huawei and H3. Understand? Okay. Then go find a gold partner. Of course, for the gold, their personnel requirements. The demand is actually very large. This, meaning there are quite a lot of vacancies. Every year, there is a large amount of, recruitment needs sent over to our, right? So this one, is also a very good choice for everyone, because, after you join this agent or partner, you might often face the need to go and do projects. These projects, there is a wide variety of in this way, you can quickly accumulate your project experience. That, in about 3 years. If you're fundamental, and the projects you get in touch, and further, If someone is willing to mentor you, this is quite that is, after you join, there will be someone we call a master or mentor. If a mentor is willing to teach you a bit more stuff, then your growth speed might be even fast. Maybe in about you will have the whole project process. All kinds figured out right? Then in your second year, you can consider doing some other things. For example, job hopping. Hopping to another reseller like this, or moving downwards. Hopping to these positions on our client. All of these are, and even, jumping to a sales management role. Of course, generally speaking, there will be some other let's not go into that. Generally, around 1 to 3 years. Try your best to get involved in projects. You need at least 1 to 3 years of project, right? And regarding this project, you should try to understand the whole picture. Even if you're just responsible for moving equipment, you should still ask more questions and observe more. You understand, the entire project document, how it's implemented, what technologies are, right? Can you complete it independently? Right? You need to simulate and learn it on your own. You can't just be told to do the grunt, and then just wait outside. Go back to the office and enjoy. Well, that definitely will. You still need to have ambition. This is a system integrator. We also call them resellers, and another one is, he is called Party A. The so-called Party A actually refers to some companies that have network usage, right? For example, various finance, right? Their requirements for the are actually very high, because their data throughput, as well as the data security, redundancy, and reliability, all have relative, right? You can't have a bank whose network crashes, right? Especially in this internet. If your network who would trust you? So for these companies, their requirements for the network are relative, therefore, cultivating such network engineers is not very realistic. It's not that they, right? Keeping them is, but it's not necessary, right? So generally, these banks and such will cooperate with our system integrators or agents to cooperate. Right? And then let the engineers from our or agents come to our bank to perform operation, to conduct. So, because this is actually not too different from what we said earlier about the service provider. But it's not just banks. Other types of companies that need to use this network. These companies, they will also have correspond. It's just that their needs aren't as strong, right? Like the finance sector. These enterprises, their network requirements are very high. So they are the main driving force. They are the main driving force. So generally speaking, as for their requirements for the engineers sent over for operations will be relatively higher. This is because the bank's network is relatively important. Relatively important. So, they usually only want people with work experience. So generally speaking, if you're at and you have over 3 years of work and also have experience participating in large-scale projects, with that kind of then it's easier for you to get a job working at the client's site. Being assigned to the client, or simply being assigned to, directly poached by the client, because you often deal with the bank staff, right? So, if you get along well with them, they might just poach you directly, as a formal staff member of the client, like becoming a permanent employee of a certain bank, right? With you responsible for the maintenance of their entire network. This situation also exists. This is what everyone mainly. When looking for a job later, the main 4 employment directions, right? Each has its own general, regarding everyone has project, and for those who urgently need project that would be system integrator. If you have some project experience already, then you might consider the however, I still recommend everyone. You can go to integrator and agent companies here to get some real-world practice. To practice a bit. Get some, then after you come out, you'll have a better resume? Right? To go after some higher positions. This is still quite common. Within each direction, their kind of career development roadmap. For example, on the Party B is actually what we call integrators and agents. So their job position are quite generally, first of all, you'll be a post-sales engineer. also called post-sales tech. Now, post-sales tech is also divided into many. For example, on-sites, like we mentioned earlier, being dispatched to a certain company to maintain their network. Right? In that case, it depends on the city you are in. Generally speaking, like Beijing, Shanghai, the salary there, relatively speaking, typically, it's 6K to 12K. This is also very normal. You understand? 6K to 12. For many fresh graduates, this one is quite attractive, but I still wouldn't really recommend becoming a factory floor engineer. Because after working in a factory for 1 year, what you'll have learned or gained? Apart from that tiny bit, just a tiny, do you really think that little money is a lot? It's really not, especially in Beijing. Just housing alone, that's already several thousand. Then you add food expenses, and going home for holidays and stuff, all kinds of expenses. Once that's all deducted, even if we calculate it based on a 100, do you think you can actually save? You can't really save much, but 3 years later, your classmates who are doing project work, their salary might have already jumped to 20K or, right? While you're still only getting, right? That's the thing about this is the downside of being a factory floor engineer. Your salary growth is almost non-existent. Just that little bit, right? Why is that? Because the technical requirements, basically, you think, I want a raise, right? I'm current, and I want to get a raise to, but then why wouldn't the company just go out on the market and hire, right? Hire a fresh graduate instead. I can just offer them, or maybe even just 8K is enough. Why should I give you a raise to, right? Your job is replaceable. So you're not valuable. Do you get what I mean? Your job can be replaced by someone else. Then your value is not being reflected. So that's why, I strongly suggest unless there are some special circumstances. Right, like, for example, and you have about a year-long study, then for that, you also don't want to be out working overtime, right, doing all sorts of, but you want to just steadily and calmly, want to get your, At a time like this, you might consider being a, because being a resident in, you see what I mean. Aside from this situation, generally, try not to choose being a resident in, so I'd rather suggest everyone go for a field engineer role. Because as a field, you will be going in and out of various, dealing with all kinds of projects. The equipment you have touched. The ones you have, you might encounter them all. This is really great training for your personal skill, is actually very good. For the training of your personal skill, it's actually, So generally, when you look for a job, like for example, at which was just mentioned, Huawei is a system integrator. It has a lot of projects to do. We have many students who have joined Huawei. Basically after working for they jump to positions with relatively higher salary. A higher position. This is also very common. Huawei is relatively still a pretty good. For newcomers. A platform for training and it's quite good. But companies like this, actually, you can search online. For these gold partners, just search. Search for network, and those doing, then go to their official, check their qualifications. See if they have gold, silver partners. This is actually very easy, or you can go to some vendors. Like Cisco or, on their you can find their corresponding, partner channel, their levels. Then, click into the these companies, are they hiring? This is also very common. Or directly through our class supervisor. Our supervisor often receive recruitment needs from company. That is. First do projects. Accumulate, then what? That is, choose a hire. A direction for it's such a path. Then what remains is. For example, then project manage. This technical department, these kind are mainly upgraded version. This is suitable for those with that is, for 1 to, then you can consider or becoming a let a team or lead this technology. Use technology as a breakthrough. This is also possible. Then on the vendor side, it's actually, they also have this revenue, so that's about employment. Let's pause here for now, and then, it's about this certification course. Related to this because everyone comes to learn. Always wanting to take something away. Right, the most critical thing is, you want to get, I just heard many of you saying, you want to know when you can get certain right? This is very practical, right? So simply. Let me show you our Cisco certification system. As for the Cisco certificate, last year, right? Last year it underwent quite a major change. CC. Previously, there were various previously, for example, like routing and wireless, security, data center, and so on. There were many CC, but now, basically they have been merged into one. After NA. After the second level is his CCNP. The second level is his CC. So this CCNP is divided into many, and the main one you all study is this track. This line, right? This is the main line you all. This is also for newcomers just entering the industry, or students just trying to take the certification exam. The most important line. Take NA, then Enterprise, then EI. This is the most important, and the one with the most test takers. The other are more like the icing on the cake. It's more of an icing on the cake. There's one point here that I need you to pay attention to. That is NANP. NIE. All three of these levels can be taken directly. There is no requirement to take NA first, then NP, then IE. There is no such requirement. Previously, there was. Before the revision, if you wanted to take, you had to take CCNA first. Understand? In the past, before 2020, if you wanted to take NP, you had to pass NA first, then you could take NP, right? But IE has never required a prerequisite certification. You could always go directly for it. Since 2020, you can directly take any of the three certification levels. You can take them, and also, the fees have been reduced somewhat. The fees have also been reduced somewhat. First, regarding CCNA. Regarding this CC, in the past, it usually cost over $2,000. Over $2,000 for the exam fee. The exam fee, that's what it took to, but now, taking it once only costs just over, it's gotten much cheaper. Of course, regarding the exchange rate, you can calculate, alright, this is just an approximate value. Okay, in the past, for taking CCNP, because you had to, and then you had to take NP had 3 exams, altogether, it was roughly, how much was it? Nearly $1,000. Within $1,000, roughly within that kind of range, right? So added up altogether, it became quite a lot. It's almost over 8,000. Right? Taking a CCN costs so, but after the new revision, you can take the directly. You don't need to take, right? You can save the money for the, and go straight for the, then your cost is only 4,900 yuan. 49, but this price might fluctuate a bit, but not by much. It won't, but everyone can just calculate this, right? So, for those students wanting to take CCNA, I suggest you might want to hold off. First, figure out for yourself whether you really need to take the NA. Because in terms of cost effectiveness, since taking the doesn't really hold much value. To be perfectly honest, because the NA and NP have the same exam difficulty. The exam difficulty is the same. You understand? So if you're thinking of taking the NA, and later you feel the NA isn't enough, and you want it, then what use is that NA certificate? Wouldn't that just be money down the So, for those students whose financial situation, I still suggest going straight for the CCN. Go straight for the C, because the NP is at least more useful than the, right? The NP is definitely more useful. Then, is it, it's not that, Then, if you take the NA exam, and later you need to take an NP exam, then that $1,000+ you wouldn't it just go to waste? Right? You can do so much better with, right? So generally speaking, you know, this has nothing to do with, not even a little bit. Because taking NA and taking NP, as I just said, the exam difficulty is exactly the same. It's just that NA requires 1 exam, while NP requires, that's the only difference. Then some students might think the exam is entire, And maybe my English is, or I haven't mastered the material well, and I'm afraid I won't pass. Right? Many students have this right? So my suggestion is this. What should you do with the NA? Save it. Save the NA exam fee. And then sign up for, once you've learned CCN, go straight for the CCNP exam. This will be much faster than first take, and then later learning NP and taking the N. It's faster this way. Right? That makes perfect sense. If you learn NA now, then go take the NA exam, and later learn NP and go take the NP exam, then your NA exam fee, isn't that just wasted? You might as well save that money and just learn CCN after learning. So just go ahead and take the NP. The difficulty of the exam is actually, why do I say it? Because both NA and NP exams only have a written part. Yeah, there's no Chinese. The exam is not available in Chinese. I mean, both the NA only have a written test. What does that mean? It means you just need to answer the question. As for whether you actually know how to answer them, or you don't know how to answer them, does it care about? No, it doesn't. So, for Chinese people, wanting to get a CCNP cert is actually very easy. Regardless of whether you actually know the stuff or not, whether you know it or not, just go get that in, answer the question, and that's it. So, how do you answer? It's because there's an exam dumps. So, the exam has no difficulty at all. You memorize the questions in advance, and then you go take the test. Generally speaking, you pass it every single time. Generally speaking, unless you are extremely unlucky. And it just so happens that when the questions change, unless you run into that, generally, you'll pass the exam without a problem. So, that's the situation with taking, that's just how it is. So, my personal suggestion is this. If it were up to me, I would definitely suggest everyone just even go straight for the CCIE. However, not every student needs to reach the CCIE, right? Because the CCIE, especially in some second and third tier cities, especially in some third and fourth tier cities and below, finding a job that matches the CCIE certification is relatively rare. Relatively rare, you get me? So for most students, NA and NP are actually enough. Mainly NP. As for NA, I won't stop you if you want to take it, but the money, however, honestly, is a bit of a waste. A bit of a waste. When this certification requirement first came out, when I saw that CCIE no longer required the NA certification, I was actually quite happy. But later I heard that some students, were still, I found it extremely unbelievable. Because for a relatively rational person, if you actually think it through, you wouldn't consider taking the CCIE. Right? I highly recommend against it, but if you insist on going, I won't stop you. Because memorizing one exam dump is memorizing two is also memorizing, right? It's all the same. So for everyone, well, unless a company has some requirements right now, right? For instance, I need to have a corresponding number of NA certs. If those companies then you can go, that I can understand. But personally, I generally don't recommend everyone to take the NA. That's basically what I mean. If you insist on taking it, because this thing, anyway, I don't get a single cent from it, right? Take it if you want. Okay, so that's about the system of our entire certification course. The system of the in the past, everyone only needed to learn routing and switching. Just finish routing and switching NA, then take the IE lab exam. Configure it, right, then you finish the exam and pass, right. That was in the past. Now, however, starting from 2020, Cisco made a change to this routing and switching. The scope of became the Enterprise Network Architecture. We refer to it as EI for short. And we call it EI, you see. So within this EI course, it mainly added content from two major modules. Among them, 30% is SDN, Software-Defined Networking. This accounts for about 30%, and about 10% on programmable development. So the remaining original routing and switching takes up the remaining 60%. Just traditional routing, that's the module structure after the new revision. Now, the exam difficulty. The exam difficulty has relatively decreased. Think about it first. Don't jump to conclusions. We'll talk about it later, right? So why do I say the exam difficulty? Because about 30% of it is this SDN, which is relatively simple to. It's all just clicking around on a web page. They just give you a web. You log in. On the system interface, you click and fill in some parameter, and then it's done, right? Therefore, the exam difficulty has decreased compared to before, especially since the syllabus just changed. Currently there's only one set of exams. In the past, you had 5 different versions of the exam, meaning you had to configure this laptop. But now, you only need to configure, right? So the overall difficulty of preparing for the exam has been significantly reduced. That's the situation. So, for all of you, right now you are still getting started. Don't rush about what comes later. First, master the CCNA, okay? So some students, CCNA is the networking fundamentals. I need to study this seriously. Actually, here's the thing. What we call network fundamentals aren't really in the NA, generally speaking. The network fundamentals are in the CCNP part. This is what do we call the first? The first part is called a popular science. It just takes some of the basic concepts in networking, gives you a simple overview, just so you can listen and get it, so you understand. Exactly, it's just meant to give you some after you understand it, then you can move on to CCNP. And then in the CCNP course, we will focus on explaining the technical principles inside, and then we'll explain them in depth. Breaking them. This course is the real fundamentals course. Only if your CCNP foundation is solid can you quickly get your CCIE certification. Okay, understand? Or in your work, because the main tasks in your job are all at this CCIE for the vast majority of you. The knowledge points you use at work are mostly covered in the CCNP, already taught, but for some higher-end positions, you might need CCIE level knowledge, or even some newly added SDN content. Those kinds of positions are relatively high. Some of you might not be able to reach them yet. Okay. So that's the situation with this course. But as I've said before, this basic course information has already been shared, just like I always say. Don't just rush to conclusions about anything, right? Think twice, and listen more to others' advice. Especially from those who are more experienced in this. Okay. So now it's 8:30. We still have a 1-hour session. Let's take a quick 5-minute break. A quick 5-minute, and we'll officially start the intro. I'll give you a brief overview of what a network and what network alright, because some of you might already have but there are some details in there that you can learn more about. For those of you who haven't heard or just treat it like listening to us, I'll walk you through. So let's take a 5-minute break, and after these 5, we will official course content.